This week I had tons of fun having a yarn with Mr. Tyson Yunkaporta, who is a member of the Apalech Clan, also senior lecturer of Indigenous Knowledge at Deakin University, and also author of the book Sand Talk, How Indigenous Thinking Can Save the World, which is a book he suggests you don't buy but borrow off a friend. This was a far-ranging yarn that covered loads of things. We had a real deep dive into WA. We looked at the impact of an extractive economy. We had a look at the rise and fall of civilisations, systems, Britain, emergence, the impact of writing things down. It was a very far-ranging and lots of fun and well worth the time listening to. Tyson's a real giggle to chat to, and he brings a whole lot of information. It's densely packed, but yes, it's a good giggle and well worth listening to. So enjoy, Tyson.
Hello and welcome back to WA Real. I'm your host, Bryn Edwards. Today I have the great pleasure of speaking with Tyson Yunkaporta. Tyson, welcome to the show.
Hey, good to be here.
Thank you very much.
I do love WA.
Yeah? What is it about WA you enjoy?
Noongar Budja. I haven't spent much time off Noongar country over there. Like I've kind of touristed through other places. But I've been brought in quite strongly to Noongar Budja, and I'm really grateful for everything I've learned over there. It's pretty spectacular. I'm working a fair bit though with Anna Paulina at the moment though.
Yeah.
And, she's from up north there, and and the Fitzroy River and all that kind of thing. We're working on regenerative songlines and things around that, and, figuring out how to assert first law. First people's law without going through native title or, anything like that. Like actually just asserting that and awesome. Getting it on the map, which is pretty cool. I do love WA. I'm coming over mid-year. Yeah. I'm allowing myself two travels this year.
And one's to WA.
Limiting travel as much as possible. And one of them is going to be over to where you are, because it's pretty special over there. The light's different.
Yeah.
Like you notice it being an East Coast person, and you come over and even the light is different. The sky is different. And on Noongar country there's a really strong sort of feminine spirit in the land, which is very, very much dominant there on Noongar country, and there's an embrace to it that's pretty lovely. Except your black snakes there behave weirdly.
In what way?
Well, everything's upside down in WA, like freaking, so over here our black snakes are right up the East Coast, north to south. The black snakes are all really shy.
Yeah.
And, you make a bit of noise and they get out of your way. They take off.
Yeah.
But it's like, so, you do that. You stomp or you tap a stick on the ground to get rid of the black snakes over here. First time ever walking country over there near Perth. And the mom's going, what are you doing? I just can't worry what you're doing there. But what do you want all the black snakes to come and bite us? Because they get attracted to the vibration,
They'll come and
Dugites or whatever you call them there. They come,
yes.
They come and get you.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, your rainbow snake there, he's all doopy, like it's like he's like, oh, hello, kind of thing. And but the rainbow snake over here on the East Coast, you don't mess with him. You don't even want to go down to the water's edge if you've been eating some meat and you got a bit of grease on your mouth. He might come up and get you. But over there, he's like really kind and benevolent. It's like, wow, your rainbow snake's nice over here. So it's really like, and as a result, the light is different. The water is different. The sand is different. It's like being on another planet. Yeah. I don't need to go to Mars. I'll just go to Perth. Send Elon there and see how he goes.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. It's equally as remote over here.
I suppose, but remote from where?
Yeah, true.
I mean, we're remote from you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm here in Melbourne, and Melbourne is pretty remote from Perth.
Yeah, true.
I suppose it depends where the center of what you value is. But I mean, I see, the wealth of knowledge over there. I see myself as being remote from that, and as having been a couple of years removed from that, and really just longing to get back and reestablish those connections and continue with my learning there.
Yeah. So what are some of the things you hope to pick up over here when you come?
Well, there was a progression of learning. Sorry, I should.
No,
so I'm a Bunurong country over here, 3,000 k's south from up home. Tyson Yunkaporta belonged to Apalech Clan. I spent a lot of time, a life of like quite intense disruption that I see as kind of an enormous gift, because I've been able to go around and learn from a lot of different people and be in a lot of different places. And your place over there, where you're lucky enough to be, living on that country, that's one of them. And I guess I had a number of elders and knowledge keepers taking me through a lot of things there, so taking me out to sites, sites where there's a twin site right over on the East Coast, and where I've been through that business there and that site. And then I don't know, the elders just smell it on you over there or something. I don't know how they know, but then they take me to the same site, but we're camping the night before, and they say, "Oh, we'll take you there and sleep first." And then they sort of spirit walk you there in your sleep first, so sort of to do a run through, and and you so there's two paths, going to this site, and you take the wrong one in sleep, and then you wake up in the morning and the old fellas are looking at you and they say, "So when we go there today, you make sure you go west, not east, with that path, okay? Because that's where you went wrong last night." And you're like, anyway. Yeah, I went through like a lot of songlines and a series of sites and learnings there that were, building to this big Waggle place. I was supposed to be able to go and actually see him, but then I don't know, I lost my job and at the time, and then I couldn't get there again. I didn't have the resources, so and that's been kind of cut off for a couple of years. But I am looking forward to getting back for a few days and just reconnecting, and I'll probably have to start over again, and it'll be another 7 years of that until I get back to where I was. But that's all right. It's just I guess it's the process of coming to knowledge that's
yes,
that's where it is. It's just so it makes you who and what you are as a human being. It's that knowledge transmission that's intergenerational, and that's what we are. And when we're in it and we're doing that, we are satisfied. There's something about ceremony, though. I don't know, I've been thinking about it lately, because I've been looking when I'm looking at tech, especially social media and stuff like that, but not only that, like TikTok and YouTube, and how those algorithms sort of learn you and figure out the best way to hijack your limbic system. I've been looking at that purely in biological and scientific terms, just to sort of see what it looks like through that lens. And there's something about when you're with somebody, so if I start personality mirroring you now, you know what I mean? If I do the same, I do these little micro nods and I lift my eyebrows up, you can't help it. Even though I'm telling you I'm doing it, you feel good. I can see it in your eyes. Your eyes are shining. You know what I mean? There's that. And then you're giving that back to me, and we're in this loop, right? We're in this loop where I'm feeling good because you're doing eyebrows up and I'm doing eyebrows up, and we're passing that back and forth. So there's some part of your mind that goes, "Oh, this person's good. This person's a friend. This person's like me." We're connecting. And so you get that reinforcement. But then when you pass that back and forth, it becomes a feedback loop. Now, when you're doing that with 50 to 100 people, and everybody's doing what you're doing, I mean, really, you're just doing what everyone else is doing.
Correct.
But the feeling for you is that everybody's doing what you're doing. and it puts you in another place, it kind of like just takes over your entire limbic system, and it lifts you into another state. I mean, biologically speaking, I mean, from my ontology and my indigenous knowledge, I'd say that that's spirit coming down, you know, and everybody coming into that halfway place between worlds, or even another world, you know. But if everybody's like, everybody's doing that together, and you're doing that, everybody's doing that, and it's going round and round, then you've got that little thing that we experienced, that feedback loop between you and me just with our eyebrows a second ago. You got that multiplied by 1,000,000, and it's so much better than what your YouTube algorithm can give you. You know, that little hit you get when someone likes the same thing you like, or you know, so we get that online, and that gets hijacked just to sell us disinformation. But in ceremony, there's you know, you can see what the evolutionary purpose of that, you know, that social, you know, feedback loop, and the way that can connect biologically through your limbic system to put you in another state, you know. And I miss that from WA. There's just I think it's because of that feminine spirit of country there on Yunkaporta. There's something about it. There's something about the lovingness and support of people who are in that space. There's a special quality to it that doesn't quite exist anywhere else, you know. I can't put my finger on what it is, but I think it's just a different frequency. When I say the light's different, like I swear, like the photons are moving at a different wave frequency there. I swear it's different light.
And the sky is so much bigger.
The sky is freaking big. And people say, well, it's because there aren't trees and infrastructure in the way. It's like, no, because I can be in, you know, like a forest of, like a mangat, forest of jamwoods, the dominant species in that place. Best freaking wood I've ever carved with, by the way. I love that mangat. And I'm there, and you know, you maybe can't even see the sky, but you still have a sense of the sky being bigger.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know if there's a physics to that, or if it's just a completely other thing, but I believe it has something to do with the light. And I love being there. It puts me in a very different feeling for place than I've ever experienced before. Yeah.
It's awesome to hear you say this, because so I've lived here for 10 years. I came from England. And
I've been there too. The light's very freaking different.
Yeah,
on your island.
Let's not bother with that. Let's stay here in WA for a minute.
Yeah, man.
And it's been a real journey over the last 10 years of living here. It's been up and down, up and down. Yeah. And more and more and more, particularly since I started the podcast, I started to connect to the people more and more and more. It honestly feels like WA is seeping its way into me and into me. And then that gets reflected in maybe the people that come on the podcast, maybe the people that I meet, the way I go about things. And it's just been this, I've been really opened up to, it's interesting you talk about feminine energy, because I've been really opened up to really subtle, delicate nuances. Yeah. More and more.
It's weird because there's everything's intensified there, because people are responding to that energy. And there are amazing responses to that energy where you'll see, you know, sometimes you'll see the infrastructure of that place responding to the energy there. So you'll be standing on the Swan River and looking across at where the boys, prep site for initiation, first stage initiation was. And there is a private boys' high school on that site. Yeah. You know, and then you look to the girls' equivalent, and goodness me, but there's a private girls' high school built on that site, you know. And then you look at the place where you're standing to see that, and you go, oh, okay, so this is a park you know, they've just kind of left this one empty. They haven't got swings or anything on it. It's just a park, and lots of people walk through this every day. And there's really strong sort of song lines and lines of energy running through it. And that's a place of law for marriage law.
Yes.
You know, with crow and white cockatoo business there. You know, it's a very sacred site for marriage law. And lo and behold, that's the place you can get a permit, and, you know, almost everybody in Perth gets married there in that park. Yes. You know, so there's on some level, people are responding in sublime ways to their energies. And they're either moving with the energies like that unconsciously, or they are just desperately fighting those energies.
Yes.
And seeking to destroy them. Because they might decide, no, we're going to build a brewery on top of this rainbow snake site. Yes. We are going to, you know, it's some of the most horrendous racism you find anywhere in Australia. It's basically, you've got Perth and you've got Cairns, and they're like fighting each other for first place for racism. It's so funny when you bring, like when you take like a middle-class person from the south, the southeast of Australia, when you take them to Cairns or Perth for the first time, just that their response to their shock at just the blatant racism, you know, and we're walking around along, no, the motels are segregated, bros. That's how that works, you know. We go on that side of the motel, or even, you know, a lot of motels in Cairns will have another motel across the road where they send the blackfellas.
I know.
So I rock up with a bunch of people from university, you know, like white lecturers and stuff, and they're all and you know, the staff is humming and hawing because they're taking a group booking, but they have to send me across the road.
Yeah.
And I don't know, we don't burr up about that up north. We don't go, oh, this is disgusting, this is terrible. It's just like, yeah, no, that's our place over there. We want to go there and hang with the blackfellas anyway. So we're kind of, you know, very accepting of the racism there. But you get someone from, I mean, the first time I took my woman back up home, and we stopped there in Cairns, and, you know, she spent most of her life in Victoria. She's from central Queensland, but, you know, she spent most of her life in Victoria. First time we're up there, and it's like, you know, 20 minutes in, where she's getting her bag checked at the shop, and none of the people in front of her in the line got it checked, and none of the people behind her. And she's all like, you know, hey, what's this going on here? This is racist. You know what I mean? And I'm like, come, we don't do that here. We just like kind of just let them check our bags and keep going. Yeah. But she's like, no, fuck this. But, you know, Perth is like, I don't know, I think Perth is worse in a lot of ways. You know, like Perth is the place where, you know, you'll be walking along, I don't know, walking on the side of the road with the mob there, and it's not unusual to be spat on by passing cars there. And there's this a sadness, but a kind of almost an acceptance of, well, yeah, that's what happens when you walk along the side of the road.
Yeah,
people will spit on you and yell things from the car. You know, it's a weird and wonderful, exciting, beautiful, peaceful, horrendous place, Perth.
So true. It's so true.
It is.
There can be these absolute moments of beauty and nature and art and creation.
Yeah.
And then the next minute.
Yeah. Well, it all only functions because there is an extractive growth-based economy.
Correct.
On top. So all of your infrastructure is based on that. All of your daily interactions are based on that and tracked through a currency that's part of a growth-based economy.
Yes.
You know, and that depends on extraction, like particularly in Australia, more than anywhere else.
Yeah. But
the only difference is that Australia is one of those rare nations that gets to extract its own stuff and keep, you know, and its own rich people get to keep the proceeds of that and make the GDP look bigger. You know, that's the only difference. We haven't got a foreign power coming in and taking all of that. Although I think under half the people in Perth would try and tell you that Asia is doing that, and they must be stopped. It's Asian invasion. You know, Asian invasion. Right.
It's interesting. It's also interesting what you're saying about the two, the two forces coming together as well.
That economic system demands a caste system.
Yes.
It has to have a caste system, because in order for anything to have a price and therefore value, it needs to be, you read any economics textbook. So, well, how do you price things? You can only price something by making it limitable and excludable.
Yeah.
You have to create artificial scarcities. You have to create a situation where there's more demand than supply, which means you've got to have at least half the people missing out.
Yeah.
How do you determine who the bottom half is that's going to miss out, like on almost everything they need to survive? Well, you need a caste system in place. You need to be able to group people in all these different identities, and then you need to decide which ones have less cultural capital than the others. Yeah. And that's unfortunately, that's just what you need for a growth-based economy. Yeah. So that's just what is. It's not because, people just need to increase their awareness, that they need to do some more cultural awareness training. And, oh my God, I didn't realize about my privilege. Like, everybody knows what their privileges are. It doesn't change anything to become aware of that. Yeah. And you can be as aware as you like, but there's these systems of inequality that demand these things continue. And people will enforce them. There's people who are in danger of losing their shit who are going to most rigorously enforce that. And so that's where you're going to get your more marginal settler groups are going to police those things more vigorously than anyone else. That's your kind of front line.
It's fascinating that you've just gone straight to the system level.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm finding at the moment, or I'm becoming super sensitive about, is that everything feels like it's being pushed onto the individual.
Yeah.
Right down to, so I have an emerging hypothesis that our rising mental health issues, whether it's depression, anxiety, suicide, is almost an appropriate response to a system that's failing. Like we're the canary birds in the mine shaft, right?
Yeah.
Yet, if you look at any of the information or knowledge about mental health, it's all put onto the individual, do the exercise, do the meditation, take your mental health seriously, this, that, and the other. But at no point do we sit back and go, hang on a minute. Why are so many people depressed? Why are so many people anxious? Why are so many people taking their own lives? Maybe because the pool in which we're swimming is a bit fucked.
Yeah.
How do you see that?
I see that variously depending on who I'm talking to. It's it's really weird. You just look at it through a multitude of lenses.
Yeah.
But in the end, as an individual and even as a community, you don't get to choose.
No.
The poison that's going to kill you. You can notice it and then see how you can jujitsu your way around it as much as possible, but that's about it.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're supposed to distract ourselves by looking sideways and trying to find the evil in each other, brothers and sisters all around us from different cultures, and to punish those things and, monitor those things and, have everybody on their toes all the time so that we're all looking that way rather than looking up.
Yeah.
Because I guess if everybody looked up at the same time and went, oh, stuff this.
Yeah.
This all got to go. Then it would all go. But that's not going to happen because we're all going to be far too suspicious of each other and far too policing of each other. And I don't know, we get our attitudes, we get this catastrophizing kind of thing going on. Everyone we look at, it's like, well, they're like, an existential threat to us just for seeing in a different way,
Yes.
And that's what we do. And that's not a natural human way of doing things. That's not what we're patterned to do as a species. Although when we were caveman theory that all the disciplines are based on will tell you that, you look and try and find the studies where that's proven in some way, and it's not. It's very, very shaky baseline data that to try and tell us that we're naturally xenophobic and that we're naturally constantly in a state of fight or flight and that we're naturally, you know, this future eaters species that's like doomed to destroy the earth because we were silly enough to come down from the trees, and that, you know, we can't help it, we can't help ourselves, you know, and it's all of us as a mass of bloody anthros that are perceiving the world, and it's like, nah.
Yeah,
that's not what we're patterned to do. We're patterned to be a custodial species, and I guess that's my translation of that one thing, that common continental common law that's all over Australia and that comes everywhere on that serpent dreaming. But you know, on your country there, on the country where you're staying right now, that story that they call it the carers for everything. As a translation into English, there's that concept of the carers for everything, that's the human's role. You know, that comes out of that first man, first woman story.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's not, you know, so we're patterned to be that. We're not patterned to be, you know, what this kind of pseudoscience is telling us that we're patterned to be. So that, you know, a handful of assholes can do whatever it is that they're trying to bloody do. I don't know. Gather everything on the planet to themselves for what end, I don't know. You know, we have to believe in their mythology of who we are, you know, in order to support them to do that. In order to burn our lives and our lands and our children just for them. And I don't know. It's a weird little cult that's come out of the weird people. Capital W, capital I, capital E, capital R, capital D. Western educated, industrialized, rich, democratic people who was, it is a very unusual way of thinking. You know, most of the people on the planet don't have that pattern of cognition, but it is the dominant culture for the planet.
Yes.
And we all have to live beneath its systems and institutions. Every single country, it doesn't matter if you're a tiny little place in Africa, anywhere else, if you want to have a chance to actually exist, then you have to have their institutions. You have to have things that look like schools, that look like local councils, that look like parliaments, that look like banks, that look like hospitals, that look like a grid system, you know, patterns for your towns, you know, postal services. You have to have all these little different institutions in place, and preferably some kind of Abrahamic religion.
Yeah,
if you can, but that doesn't necessarily work everywhere. You know, and and you have to be networked in, and you have to become part of ridiculously complicated, not complex, complicated and clunky supply chains. You have to be at the mercy of those and become part of that ridiculous ecosystem. Because all of that is, you know, feeding, you know, through subsidies and everything else back into these coffers of about 80 people on the planet. And every disaster you get just is a way of transferring a bit more wealth from the land and from the lower caste people, like the lower 90% of people, transferring it from them upwards. Every time you vote, you're only voting for 10%. You're voting for, you know, you're voting for how that 10% of the planet is going to keep wrecking it, basically.
Yes.
Half of that 10% will tell you a story of we'll use welfare rhetoric in order to maintain the caste system, and the other half of that 10% will use trickle down economic theory and, you know, rugged individualism as their rhetoric to reinforce that caste system. You know, and you can vote for which brand you like, but they're all in the same boat. And they all have the same goal, the same ends, and it is to maintain that infinite growth model, because that's the extractive model. And I suppose maybe there's an end game, maybe there isn't. Maybe it's just a self-organizing system that sort of was put in place with a system of perverse incentives that just arms raced and ratcheted its way up to where we are now.
That's So that's really interesting, because I encounter a lot of people who, particularly over the last 12 months, have strongly engaged with conspiracy theories of, there's a small group of people, a cabal that runs the world, and, we're all at their bidding. And I wonder sometimes whether, that's in it. It's easy to dive into that, because then all of a sudden there's a them and an us and this, that, and the other, and I'm now segregated because I'm not part of them that are running the world. But I also sometimes wonder whether, like you just said, there's these chaotic patterns that have started off with something quite small many centuries ago, and have grown and grown and grown and grown and grown and grown and grown. The more I've thought about this, and the more I've started to go back and consider, not just the extractive part, but also the colonization, as we now fight from having our consciousness colonized by social media, and have this sort of theory that it came out of watching the Social Dilemma film. My immediate reaction was, oh my gosh, our unconscious is being swapped by technology thing. and yet then if I go back and back and back and back and back, through different empires and stuff like that, we've been at this colonizing game. When I say we, I said me, the weird. This colonizing game has been played out over and over and over and over again, and I wonder sometimes whether it's, I'm not trying to abdicate people's responsibility, but I wonder whether it's like this perpetuating. I see it as like this whirlwind that keeps picking up and picking up and picking up, picking up, and it started somewhere. And
Fertile Crescent,
and it's just, and here we are, centuries, millennia on, and this is, is this the blunt end of it, or is there even more layers to go? I mean, I found it super interesting when I was reading your book, that delineation between oral traditions and writing shit down. And I was like, whoa! I think I sat with that for a couple of days. And just extrapolated out what that meant. And it wasn't difficult to go from there to here.
Well, that was the thing that created the weird cognition. Western educated, industrialized, rich, democratic. And it is a different form of cognition. And it was, it started when Martin Luther banged his note up on the door. And so you ended up with Protestantism coming about. When Protestantism came about, there was it coincided with the arrival of the printing press. And so there was this big drive to, like, everybody should be literate so that they can have their own personal relationship with God, and they can read the Bible for themselves. And they can read analysis and do analysis for themselves to find their own way through and their own direct path to God. And this was something unheard of in human history, the idea that people would have an individual sort of way of being in the world, and an individual relationship with the divine that would allow them to move through the world without being accountable, to a collective at all. And that's when that happened, and everybody had to follow suit. So so they started all these schools that were basically just teaching literacy, so that people could read what was coming off the printing presses. Which is interesting, because it was pretty much, that was your first conspiracy theories. Were coming off, like most of what came off the printing presses is pretty much QAnon, but medieval version of, so people were reading that and the Bible, and the Catholic Church had to follow suit and actually start up their Catholic schools as well. Because they had to remain competitive. So everybody gains this literacy, and the literacy itself rewires your brain. So it actually thickens, it physically thickens the connection between the left and right side of your brain, which is naturally quite a flimsy little thing. But it thickens it physically, biologically. It causes things to be moved around. So your facial recognition facial recognition stuff has to be moved from the right side to the left side, for example. Because there's no room for it there. That's being used now for something else. And so that means, if you become literate, suddenly your facial recognition is shitty.
Yeah.
Like, it's really bad. You don't have that skill anymore.
Yeah.
So you're walking around in a world of faceless people, focusing on yourself as an individual on a hero's journey to find God. Now, that's going to end up nowhere good. You suddenly got all these rugged individuals in the Northern Hemisphere sort of walking around doing that and spreading that. Then, genocides will ensue and some pretty horrendous stuff. I mean, civilization itself, as it began in that Fertile Crescent in what we call the Middle East now, a 10,000-year-old experiment that always fails, 500 to 1,000 years, every one of these civilizations must collapse.
Yes.
Because it collapses under the laws of physics. You just can't outsource your entropy forever.
Yes.
Unless you can spread your extractive activities further and further afield. But the further afield you go over the frontier, the further away from the sphere of trust and control you get, and things become fragile. Yeah. But they have managed through, global communications and, private armies and all kinds of stuff going on, and particularly nuclear weapons, managed to make a global net around the world whereby the entropy can keep getting outsourced further and further afield.
Yes.
You can just move that. You can just externalize all your harm away from your clean technocratic spaces for a very small percentage of the population. And basically, the top 50% of people who are weird, they get to enjoy spaces that are so nice that they never, ever, they can live their whole life without ever getting punched in the face. And it's, I keep meeting people who have never, ever been punched in the face. It's like, holy shit, and they've completely, and the idea of violence is just terrifying to them. It's like, no, that's bad. That's like evil. That's anti-human.
Yes.
And, so rather than, in a natural system, in a complex system, violence is evenly distributed throughout the system and therefore does minimal damage. But in the weird model, it gets concentrated into these piles. And then the entropy, the damage from all that stuff, that keeps getting outsourced elsewhere as externalities that are, deployed and exploded, detonated as far away from the center as possible. So this particular civilization has got to live past its use by date, as no other civilization before has, and it's done that through it just keeps coming up with new ways to do it, temporary sort of ways that actually create more and more runaway entropy, to the point that in the last 4 decades we've lost 60% of the biodiversity on the planet. They harnessed the energy. They couldn't have slaves anymore, so they harnessed the energy of ghost slaves. A lot of energy to run a civilization. So they did the ghost slaves, which is the spirit of things long dead, beneath the ground, that create fossil fuels, and so they burn that spirit. And they're harnessing that ghost slave energy. But there are externalities from that go into the atmosphere, that acidify like waters and change climate and dry continents out and all these kind of horrendous things. But every civilization does that. You go to the earliest ones like Uruk. You ever heard of Uruk?
No.
Go check out that dig site. Check out the primary sources that were writing about the bloody paradise that was in initially. Now it's like you'll see a few walls and pottery shards and ceramics and a few bits of gold and stuff lying in the middle of a desert. It wasn't a frickin' desert before. You read about all these early civilizations in the Bible, and they're in like, these beautiful big forests and pasture lands and all this sort of thing. And but that kind of the you go there now and it's just bloody blasted, dead, exposed earth.
Yeah.
You know, that's what civilization does to land.
Yeah.
And it's what's happening right now in Perth.
Yes.
And your part of the world is drying out because of it.
Yes.
And in a few decades, where you are is going to be virtually unlivable for the kind of society that you built there.
Yeah.
You know, you will not have the water to keep, you know, having your food bowl that you've got there.
Mm.
You know, the wheat belt, do you call it?
Yeah, the wheat belt.
Yeah, the wheat belt's going to be like a wheat bracelet in a couple of decades, you know. What are you going to do then? Mm. Well, you are going to keep for as long as you can. Like you have to destroy the entire Kimberley first.
Yeah. Because
there's ore there, and that ore is what's going to get Australia through this 10-year depression that's starting now.
Mm.
You know, so the Kimberleys will have to be destroyed, and those Aboriginal lands and communities will have to be destroyed in order for you to be able to keep having your house there.
Yeah.
And somehow shipping in enough water, or I don't know, getting desalination plants going.
Yeah.
That will give you enough water just to be able to drink to maintain your lifestyle there. But, you know, a lot of people are, you know, I see a lot of elders who are identifying where the strong underground water is that's nowhere near any mineral resources that anybody could want.
Yeah.
And just quietly not telling anybody about that, and gradually moving, you know, things over there, structures to live in.
Yeah.
Just quietly under the radar, moving some guns and stuff onto that site, and having that place ready to go to, because they're like, well, you know, it'll be any time in the next few years we're going to have to disappear out to there.
Hmm. It's interesting you say that, because I had I actually had Sean Nana, Noel's nephew, on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. And he said something upon similar about, you know.
Oh, man, say hi to him for me when you see him.
I will.
It's been a few years.
I will. He was saying how, you know, life lives on. And he said, at some point, you'll notice me and the rest of the family will head over the hills.
Yeah.
We'll be gone then.
Yeah. So proper, like, prepper family. Grownups.
Yes.
Yeah. Like this sensible preppers. But, you know, also there's nothing sensible about telling people that you're going to do that, though. I don't know why they're doing that. I think they're just very compassionate, and they just want to let other people know that that's happening so that they can make the preparations too. Yeah. But in doing that, you're really risking your own place.
Yes.
You know, because you look at anywhere where the civilization falls apart, you know, so you look at where that's happened in the Baltic sort of states, and well, Argentina is a really good example. So you look at the most recent examples of that, and your best chance of survival was not having, you know, food sovereignty out in the countryside somewhere. You know, those people were the first to die, because the first thing that happens when everything falls apart in the civilization is you get roving gangs of bandits just basically raping and pillaging over the countryside, living off everybody else's prepping, you know, off their orchards and daughters and bunkers and anything else, you know.
Yes.
Anywhere where that's stockpiled. The people who actually had the best chance of survival were the ones who stayed in the cities.
Right.
And, you know, caught pigeons and ate their dogs, and, you know, actually, you know, collectivized in neighborhoods and got together and protected each other that way. And, but that only works if you're waiting out, you know, the period of chaos for, you know, the state to reassert, you know, a kind of blanket of law and order
to come back.
So they survive that few years until that comes back into place.
Yeah.
But yeah, if we're ever looking at a situation where that's gone forever, you know, the nation state sort of command and control structures, then it's a different prospect.
Yeah.
But I don't see that as something that could possibly wink out overnight, barring some massive global catastrophic event like a electromagnetic pulse from the sun that wipes out all the electronics, and or something like that. I don't see that kind of happening all in one go. I see it sort of fizzling out like stupidly and in undignified ways over a number of decades. And everybody gradually adapting to that. But people will have to realize that they need to become more mobile, and that there are a lot of really good mindsets and ways of being in the world that you can learn from refugees, for example. I've already been through this. There are a lot of, I've got a mate who's he's got an architecture firm where they basically build movable buildings, beautiful, affordable, movable dwellings, that you can sort of ship away from a coastline pretty easily within a couple of weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. No, he's doing really well with that, actually.
So here's a question that, and maybe we answered this already, but I've been toying with for a while, is where have all the grown-ups gone? Because it strikes me at times that you and I are talking about this now, and to me there's a sense of felt truth in it, and yet to a lot of others they'll sort of come close to it and then it will be traumatic, so they'll want to go away from it. And it strikes me that we've had this sort of cycle of pandering to that trauma, that traumatic experience, and like, well, it's all a bit much, let's not go there. But when I say where have all the grown-ups gone, I mean like the ones who say, well, I'm sorry if you're finding it traumatic, but it's actually part of your growth.
Well, look, anyone who starts making sense like that, they immediately get removed from their community by the marketplace. And it's like, they get turned into these reluctant gurus and have to spend all their time doing fucking interviews like this, instead of actually doing something in their communities, anybody that, someone decides is making sense and therefore they have value. Well, in order for that to be priced, like I said before, they have to be limitable and excludable. So you immediately have to exclude that person's communication and knowledge from the bottom 50% of the population, and then sell it to everyone in the top 50% of the population, but make sure that person's message is being controlled by the top 10%. Who are controlled by the top 1%. So, it's like basically you're constantly being funneled into this command and control structure. And it's not, a room full of people doing this. Like I said, it's self-organizing now. All the algorithms on these platforms are doing that automatically now. And pretty much just wiping out any kind of community wisdom or collective wisdom. And this is your smallpox. For your settlement. This is what we had with smallpox, syphilis, all the rest, the massive wave of disease that swept across this continent pretty much before any settlers even caught sight of a functioning Aboriginal society. That society was already like knocked horrendously, because who did those diseases kill first? It was the old people. So when you were having your first contact moments, as you started moving into the interior, I know you only just got here, but I don't have time to distinguish between settlers. So I'm just saying you.
And I'm gracefully taken.
So, and you're from the mother country, so, stuff, So, as your culture was having its first contact moments and recording as much as they could, all you were recording was, the expression of an extremely dysfunctional and disrupted culture already, because, most of our elders had died. you know, so where are all the grown-ups? You're asking now of your own culture. But at the time, as you were first meeting us, all our grown-ups were dead. And we were working really hard to figure out, you know, how to make sure we held on to all the law and, you know, where that was. And we're madly shuffling things around as one group was being genocided, trying to make sure that that was stored with another group, all of that knowledge, so that when the population came back over here, you know, that could be passed back. So a lot of us are doing that work now of bringing a lot of that knowledge home, and regenerating a lot of the song lines and the ceremonial activities along those song lines. You know, and I mean, that's how I came to Perth, was, you know, from working with Mundagutta story from Western New South Wales, and up over the border into Queensland there, and that linking up across and working with those elders, and then traveling across with those elders to Perth back in the day. You know, it's all this stuff just unfolds, and things are kept there. And, you know, people who are embedded in the landscape, you know, are keeping these things. You know, it's like, for example, you know, when I got there and I met some of these elders, like in WA, you know, one of them was like saying to the, oh, he's here. This fella here we were waiting for before. And, you know, he takes me out to his shed and he's got, I've been hanging on to this for you for 30 years. And it was a big blue whale vertebra. It had washed up on the beach, and his old people had said, just hang on to this for a while. There'll be somebody who'll come along and you'll see white owl business that he's carrying there. And this is this white owl spirit that an owl's brought up from, you know, the drowned country. And you've got to pass this on to him. You know what I mean? And then, so then I've got to take that back across, and I've got to pass that on to the right people, you know, so I'm being this kind of intermediary. So I'm passing that owl business back to people over on the East Coast, and, you know, making sure that's going back into the right place, you know. So there's all these actions that have to occur through massive cataclysms, you know, whereby the law of the land can be maintained and kept and eventually reestablished.
Do you see
that's going on? So where all the grown-ups, it's an emergence. You know, the system will throw up grown-ups again. You know, at the moment there's a massive cataclysm in your own sort of culture of everybody has been infantilized, and a lot of that's because of the world leadership over the last few years. The most powerful and most famous man who ever lived has been running the world recently and giving everybody the workshop on how to be pricks to each other, you know, and how to remain completely unaccountable. You know, you do something horrendous, and how you get out of that is like doing 9 or 10 other horrendous things immediately.
Yes.
And if anybody is like, you know, isn't completely exhausted, and will try and hold you to account for each of those things at each point as they try and hold you accountable for it, you just flip it back on them. Oh, I didn't do that. You did that. You did that. And now you're bullying me. I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe. You're bullying me. You know, that's the workshop. And everybody left and right is doing that. They're doing that in their personal relationships. I don't know. That's probably how you argue with your spouse now. Tell me that's not a pattern that you've seen emerge in your personal relationships, with whether you've got kids, a spouse, your friends, anybody. If you say, oh, when you do that to me, that's really hurtful. And they'll turn around and they will say to you, I didn't do that. You did that. And now you're victiming me. You're victimizing me.
It's a race to inhabit.
And they will escalate and escalate and escalate until you give up and apologize. That's your personal relationships now with every single person in your life. That's most of the people on the planet are having to have their personal relationships, even that, coming through the art of the deal and the Trump workshops that we've all had. And that's where we are now. So where are the grown-ups? The grown-ups have Benjamin Buttoned, man, horrendously. But there are people and there are entities in the landscape that are keeping all that wisdom for you and keeping that knowledge for you. And as soon as we get through that bloody cataclysm, then that can start coming back that way as well. You know, it's the end of the world is never the end of the world. You know, you get one of those every 10,000 years or so. That's just part of the natural cycles of the earth. Yeah. Where are you going to go with that, Bryce?
I'm just going to sit with it.
Just going to sit with it. So why are you here? Why did you come out? Are you one of the? I can tell you're not one of those. You know, oh, it's just England is not England anymore. England's not England anymore. Bloody national dish is chicken tikka, for fuck's sake.
No.
Oh no, I don't like all that curry.
No,
I don't like me fucking potatoes like that. I'm coming out here and I'm gonna
and
bring £1 million and it'll become £3 million. And I'm gonna be a landlord and sit on my fat ass here and whinge about things.
Did you ever see the Stanley sketch about people moving to the colonies for the standard of life?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I didn't come here for the prawns either.
No. Baloney.
To answer your question, look, on one level, I could give you a whole lot of rational answers about. Well, I'm not even going to bother. I came to Australia when I was 18, 19 years old, and something changed in me, and I went home, and one of the first things my mother said was, "Did you enjoy it?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to go back and live there."
Yeah.
And she was like, "Oh, really?" Like, passed it off. And then a set of circumstances came about for me to come here. But without sounding too ethereal, there's always been a pull. And there's a reason, and I don't quite get it, but there is a reason. And that's probably as good as I can.
And did you pull when you get here? When you got here? Did you pull? You did. You hooked up?
No,
you hooked up with a skip chick?
No, I came here. It's when we were talking earlier on about the forces coming together of almost like the land and how naturally things should be, and then how we want them to be, and how these whirlwinds of thoughts and way of being collide together. That's what happened for me within about 3 or 4 years of being here. Everything that I came with exploded,
right?
And
you can't go back, because you just don't have the schema anymore to.
No, and when and I'm sitting for everything exploded, and then all of a sudden I'm sitting there in a little flat, wondering, how the fuck did all that happen? How did you just like? And it's interesting, Tyson, because it's almost like I had to come here for it to happen, and it had to happen. So I had to come to WA, and this was the place that it had to happen.
Your accent's nearly gone. I'm trying to place it. It's not Liverpool. It's not
Gloucestershire.
Gloucestershire. Yeah, it just comes through every now and then a little bit, and I'm like, nah, what's that? All right.
And then since then, it was almost like everything got burnt right down to the ground, into ashes, and then I had to rebuild, and that's what I've done. And part of the amongst many things that I've done to rebuild, this has been part of it. Talking to people.
Well, as you excavate down through those ash layers of your life that you built here, you find there are other layers beneath it.
Yes.
Other ashes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting.
Lots of bone chips and stuff in there.
Yeah, and I guess from here, as everything disintegrated, it's been fascinating, particularly last year, to go on a journey, a line of inquiry with the podcast that even took me to places like, so I went to a boarding school.
Yeah.
For 11 years. So, separated from mum and dad at the age of 8. And so then I spoke to someone who's a expert in boarding school trauma. Now that's a difficult conversation to have, because how do you put privilege and trauma in the same sentence?
Yeah.
Not easy. Not everybody wants to hear that.
Yeah.
But it occurred. And
like what kind of boarding school? Like, you know, you go to like the Forest Kids 21st birthday kind of boarding school, or
how do you mean?
Well, I mean, how elite was your boarding school? Like,
it wasn't. We're not talking Eton's here. Probably.
Oh, you went in the UK.
Yes.
Sorry, I was thinking about WA. Like when you came back.
No.
All right, no, because you came in 19. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Oh, because I moved here. I moved
here
when I was 36.
Ah, jeez.
So yeah, but you go back into that, and then all of a sudden I could feel some of the trauma that sits at the heart of the British psyche. So, you know, it's all these different layers since coming here that
allowing
whatever goes on here, the energy of this place, to penetrate and different like ring layers of a tree inside of me. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, the British psyche is one of, you know, I mean, it's just horrific waves of invasion and colonization over and over and over again. And it's basically, you know, unexamined trauma of that's, you know, just sort of buried. No, that was in the past.
Exactly. We'll bury that.
You know what I mean?
No wonder.
While we're still doing it to, like, you know, 3 of the 4 things that we call Britain. It's just, you know, oh my goodness. You know, it's, I mean, it's just, I mean, you had Moorish invasions there at one stage. You had, like, you know, you had the Romans, but then even the Celts themselves were invaders coming in there. Each subsequent wave, you know, on that beautiful fertile island, you know, that moved it from a place that had cave bears and freaking dire wolves, like shifted it from that to some fucking Bronze Age horror, and then, you know, and further and further and further away, you know, each step was like this ratchet moving people away from the land. It's just an awful tale of abuse. You know what happened on that island. You know, you copped it from every kind of Viking that there was, just waves. And it's pretty much, you know, every few generations, people had to go, oh, okay, all our men are dead, and we're going to have to marry these rapists now. Oh my God. Again. Okay. You know, but then weirdly, because of the nature of those invasions and the, you know, killing all the men and raping all the women, there's this kind of matrilineal line that's come right through from your, you know, Pictish and pre-Pictish and Beaker people, like no one even knows what the hell they were.
Yes.
Who made the fairy bolts, but it's still there because it's come through in this matrilineal line coming through.
Yeah.
Because all the people that invaded immediately killed all the men.
Yeah.
And boys and took over the women. So weirdly, you know, England kind of did this thing where it kept, I don't know, colonizing the colonizers.
Yeah.
Because within a few generations, that sort of, you know, that women's culture, that matrilineal culture would reassert itself again into these bioregional cultures.
Yeah.
That freaking, for some reason, on this tiny island, there's like, I mean, how many different accents are there?
Oh, ridiculous.
So the land still asserts that pattern over your speech in these bioregions.
Yes.
To the point where it keeps expressing itself, even though you're forced all to speak this ridiculous trade Creole with a bit of Norman and a bit of Saxon and a bit of Angle and a bit of freaking Jute and Dane and freaking everything else coming through. You know, even Indo-European.
Yeah.
You know, that was an invasion. Fucking everything. And each time the land keeps reasserting its spirit. You know, I think it has something to do with the really powerful sacred sites and underground water things that you've got there. And the people, I mean, you still go to the fucking chemist, and what do you get there? You get your walking trails map, hey?
Yeah.
You know, you get your walking trails map wherever you are in England, and you walk ancient freaking paths.
Yeah.
You know, every person, no matter where, if you move to another village where they have a different accent or whatever, or if you're visiting or going through, you bastards always end up walking those paths. And the farmers can't keep you out. They've got to provide access, you know, through their fields for you to continue walking these ancient song lines, these ley lines, you know, these trade routes all over your. So it's weird. England, the land keeps asserting its spirit. No matter who invades it, no matter what kind of economic system gets mapped over the top. And that's got to give you some hope.
Yes.
Is when this global economic system does finally collapse, you know, it's that will still be there for you, and that will still be there for whoever's here too, and it's going to really help when we start the 1,000-year cleanup together.
Yeah. Are we starting it or
no?
No.
There's more messes to be made yet.
More messes.
It'll have to start soon though, because people were worried recently that the ice melt, you know, at the poles would expose the abandoned bases, scientific and military, because those bases are all run by small nuclear reactors, and there are massive, big, you know, open air ponds of radioactive coolant, and they just abandoned those and let the snow cover it over. And they're really, really worried about the ice melt, you know, with climate change exposing those and basically, you know, rendering entire bloody hemispheres radioactive.
Yeah.
It's completely destroying ecosystems. And, you know, once you get into those currents, they go everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a Coriolis effect that might protect one hemisphere from the other temporarily, but eventually that bleeds across.
Yeah.
So they were worried that that was going to happen any day now. But recently they've said, no, we don't have to worry about that anymore because it'll be a century. We've got 100 years until that happens.
Right.
And there are about 50 other things that are, you know, complete existential threats that won't happen for another 100 years.
Right.
And then there are about 500 other things that are complete existential threats that could drop any day.
Yeah.
And we're not slowing down.
No.
We're adding to that. We're going, and we're going to chuck CRISPR into the mix now. I mean, because we can. So, yeah, and this and that. And, my goodness. Yeah, so we haven't started the cleanup yet.
Right.
You know, the baby is still shitting on the floor. And, yeah, and we haven't started cleaning it up yet.
What, you used the word hope a minute ago. What does hope look like?
Hope usually is not something I'm interested in. I think it's something that people use to avoid accountability.
Yeah.
I think it's something that people use to sort of wallpaper over the externalities that they produce.
Yeah.
Because every action that you take, so you might campaign for something, you know, a solution, a particular solution, but that solution is producing externalities.
Yeah.
So you're improving conditions in one place or for one group of people, but all you're doing is outsourcing that entropy to somewhere else, that damage to somewhere else. If you're not aware of the externalities you're producing, I mean, you need to have hope to cover that over.
Yes.
And this feeling that the good that you're doing in the world is improving the world and not just shifting the shitty stuff to somewhere else. You know, so that's what hope is for. Hope is also there to keep people compliant and to keep people calm when they're in absolutely intolerable conditions. It's this lack of agency. It's a longing for a set of future conditions over which you have no control. That's what hope is to me. Hope is a mechanism that liberalism as a self-organizing system throws up to keep us in line.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So a different question then is, what can we do?
What can you do? You can foster the conditions for emergence.
Yes.
Your frontal lobe is the most inefficient, clunky, ineffective mechanism on the planet for creating solutions to complex problems. You know, you need to do these things collectively. You need to listen to everybody. You need to bring people together and share all the stories and find a narrative path through. And we just need to support each other, and we need to make sure that we're behaving as interconnected, interrelated groups of people. And we've got to reject this idea of some people having solutions or an ideology being better than another ideology.
Yeah,
because otherwise we waste all of our time struggling over those things, and basically all of our energy that needs to be funneled into actually the 1,000-year cleanup. Instead, that's just getting burned up as heat in our struggles against each other. You know, so we've got to, you know, just speak the way you speak. You don't have to insist that other people speak the same way. You just speak that way, live that way, and go and interact and listen to as many people as possible, and allow every interaction to change you.
Yes.
You know, give freely, try not to accumulate anything, keep as much as possible, have every unit of value, energy, information, everything else, exchanging hands at least 10 times. You know, you've got to have velocity, you know, within a system. And if you make that demotic, biotic, you know, natural system of interaction, if you increase that, then you're allowing for emergence to happen. For a larger mind, you know, is basically liberalism is this big Godzilla, you know, but altogether it's kind of emerged, you know, organically under its own steam, and it's sort of the singularities happened. You know, it is a massive, complex, self-organizing entity. And we need to start behaving, you know, as human beings in our own system embedded in a landscape. And just doing that, then, you know, the beast that might actually fight Godzilla for us will emerge from that. But if you are operating under any illusion that you can do community organizing or, you know, online activism, or get some memes together, or get a following, or make the next platform, or make the next organization that's going to save the freaking world, you know, that's some Power Rangers shit that just isn't going to work.
Power Rangers shit.
Yeah.
What's this last couple of questions? It's a slightly more human question. Was it like being Tyson Yunkaporta, who sees so deeply into the world?
I don't think I see deeply at all. I think I'm spread very thin right across the entire surface. You know, my relationships are not what they should be.
Yeah.
They're not what they were.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, I just go with it. I assume that there are entities that are far smarter than I am, that are directing me, you know, towards these things. And so I just follow the signs. You know, I know how to read country, and, you know, that's a transferable skill set. And so I read all of these systems in the same way, and I just let myself go where I'm directed. You know, so I might not be feeling it with, you know, some big bloody podcast with 8 million viewers or something that wants to talk to me, and I'm just not feeling it. I'm not seeing any sign to go on there, and I'll say nah. But then I'll do some other pissy little podcast that some expat's doing out of his living room, you know, because I'll feel, I get that message that, well, this is the one I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
And, you know, so I just go where I'm kind of blown. Although that seems a bit, I don't know. No, that sounds a bit random. It's not as random as that. Yeah. You know, I just follow the signs and I do what I'm supposed to do. It's seldom in my best interests. But you know, I know now, after, you know, nearly 5 decades, that every time I try to plan a path through, every time I have a fucking ambition or a goal or a mission or I'm going to do this, that will be like you know, that I'm going to get swallowed by the fish and spat up somewhere else. So I just, you know, let the current take me where it's supposed to take me. And I don't fight that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's seldom what I want to do. And, but what I want to do is irrelevant. You know?
Yeah.
And I guess, you know, you're never happier than when you're really allowing these things to take you where they're supposed to take you. And it always ends up somewhere that's right in the end. You go, oh, that's what all that was for. Yeah. Oh, all that abuse was, okay, yeah, that was a whole heap of co-evolutionary pressures that would lead me to this train of thought. Okay, awesome. Fuck. Geez, that really hurts, though. I got to get some ointment for that.
Yeah.
No. It's very difficult. I think people like catastrophize trauma. I mean, there's a lot of impacts on everybody's life, and whether you feel trauma or not from that, or experience trauma and keep going around and around and under the water with it, cycling back through it, and you know, is that's up to you. I find that's really unhelpful. It doesn't allow you to learn what you're supposed to learn and be put where you're supposed to be put, and you just kind of accept that. It's like, oh, okay, so my jaw is now going to click for the rest of my life. Okay, that's fine. That's good. And then you stop having nightmares about it. You know, you just, you know, put on the ointment and keep going.
Indeed.
And make sure you extract the learning. You find you allow that to put you on the path where you're supposed to be, and then it's all pretty good. There's no trauma there. Yeah, it's just all life and knowledge and all the rest. But like I said, it's my doom to be spread sort of thin and sort of so far, you know, I've been granted a few, you know, periods where I've been able to be in a place and go deep there. But I've never been allowed to stay there for too long. I am hoping that the last little part of my life that I'll get 10 years just to be somewhere and be deep there without having to be moved on. But that's everybody's longings, you know. Very true. I'm not making plans for that. I'm just, you know, that's something quietly that I would like one day.
Yeah. Please, Spirit.
Yeah.
Listening.
But that's all right. Maybe like another time around.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll get born through after the cleanup and get to enjoy a bit of that then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Maybe that's what we're longing for. So last question I ask all my guests. It's a hypothetical one, but it's always good fun. If I could just slow everyone down for 5 or 10 minutes, and Tyson could just stick a question into the collective consciousness that everybody thinks about or reflects on for 5 or 10 minutes, what would that be?
Oh, just that first protocol. It's the old fellas, the first question they ask you, where are you going?
Where you going?
There's everything in that. It's like, what is your purpose here? Well, what's your trajectory? Where have you come from? Where are you going to? Yeah. What is your purpose here? Yeah, in this place. And you know, with this implied kind of, well, that's going to have to be regulated. It's that first. Anywhere you go in country or you come in community, you know, you meet them old fellas. That's always in whatever language, you know. It's where you're going.
Where you going?
Weirdly, that's often translated. That language phrase is often translated into English as welcome.
Right. Yeah.
So in Melbourne, you know, and in Victoria, it's a Wamajika.
Yeah.
And you know, and that's called welcome. You know, for settlers. You know, but what it really means is, where are you going?
Yeah.
What are you doing here?
Yeah.
Papers, please. Yeah.
Yeah. Who are you?
Yep. Wanake.
Indeed.
Like, yeah. Up north, that's, well, all them old people. First thing, not like, hello, how are you? Wanake. Where are you going?
Where you going?
Yep.
Awesome.
And there's purpose to that. So ak means like place, purpose, all that kind of thing. So you might answer in poyaka, like, so wanake, that ak. You go in poyaka, like I'm going for mud crabs.
Yeah.
You know, that's my purpose.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, you might bring me a couple of those crabs back. Well, and then you have to.
Then you're obliged.
Yeah.
Superb.
Yeah.
Tyson, I've really, really enjoyed talking to you this morning.
Yeah, same way.
Been a good giggle.
Yeah.
We've been lots of different places.
Yeah. Lots of different places.
Yes. I feel like I've travelled more deeply in Western Australia by talking to someone in Victoria, strangely enough.
Isn't that weird? But that's how it goes. Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah, if anybody's wants to know more about Tyson, I'd suggest you go and read his book, which seems to be
just borrow it from somebody or from a library or something. There's plenty of copies out there already. Just like don't buy one. I'm trying to encourage people not to buy them anymore because it's you know, it's one of those things when you get to a certain number of units sold, it kind of ruins your life a fair bit. You get positioned in this marketplace in ways that are not conducive to having good relations in the world.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to reduce sales as much as possible at this stage.
Yeah. Okay. So don't go and buy his book.
Just borrow from the library, or even just talk to someone about it, or whatever.
I've read it.
I'll tell you their stuff, how they read it. All right, man.
Thank you very much.
All right. See you, bro.